The 1980s gave us some of the most feel-good music ever recorded. Big synths, massive production, songs you couldn't get out of your head. Some of those songs, though, were carrying something the radio never mentioned. The real stories behind a few of these classics are darker, sadder, and considerably stranger than what most people assumed when they were singing along. These are the 10 darkest secrets behind 80s classic songs. Number 10, Jump by Van Halen, 1984. Jump is one of those songs that sounds like pure, uncomplicated energy. The opening synthesizer riff, David Lee Roth's vocal, the whole arena-filling momentum of it, it lands as an anthem about seizing the moment and not holding back. The inspiration behind it, according to David Lee Roth, is considerably less uplifting. Roth has recounted in interviews that he was watching local news in Los Angeles, and the broadcast cut to a story about a man standing on a ledge of a building threatening to jump. Might as well jump. Roth, watching from his couch, said that the thought crossed his mind. Somewhere in the crowd below, someone is probably shouting, "Go ahead and jump!" He was struck by the dark absurdity of that impulse, the human capacity for callousness in the middle of a crisis. And it stayed with him. Out of that grim seed grew a song that Roth deliberately reframed as encouragement rather than despair. He turned the phrase around and made it about taking a leap of faith, moving forward, not letting fear stop you. The transformation was complete enough that almost nobody connected the finished song to the story behind it. It became one of the biggest hits of 1984, reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and spent 5 weeks there. Van Halen's first and only chart topper. The studio tension surrounding the recording is its own story. Eddie Van Halen had written the synthesizer part years earlier, and the rest of the band had repeatedly resisted using it because they felt synth-driven music wasn't in line with their hard rock identity. It was only after Van Halen realized the riff was too good to sit unused that the song came together. A suicidal crisis, a dark impulse, years of internal debate, and a synthesizer riff that almost never made it out of the rehearsal room. What you hear is an anthem. What built it is considerably more complicated. Number 9, Every Breath You Take by The Police, 1983. Every breath you take. Few songs have been more systematically misread than this one. Every Breath You Take was number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 8 weeks in 1983, making it the best-selling single of that year, which is a remarkable achievement given that 1983 was also the year Michael Jackson's Thriller was releasing its run of hit singles. It won the Grammy Award for Song of the Year in 1984. Every step you take, I'll be watching. It has been used at weddings, played at romantic dinners, offered as a declaration of love by people who, if they ever stopped to examine the actual content of what they were saying, might have reconsidered. Sting has been very clear about what the song is in multiple interviews over the years. In a 1983 interview with the New Musical Express, he called it a nasty little song, really rather evil, and described it explicitly as being about jealousy and surveillance and ownership. He wrote it in the middle of the night, during the collapse of his first marriage to actress Frances Tomalty, and the obsessive surveillance of the lyric was entirely intentional. It was not a declaration of love. It was a portrait of someone who cannot let go. In a 1996 appearance on VH1's Storytellers, Sting acknowledged the widespread misinterpretation with evident dry amusement, noting that people had played the song at their weddings without appearing to register what they were actually playing. He He has said the ambiguity was deliberate. The melody sounds loving while the words describe something else entirely. But he was always clear about which interpretation was correct. The song has been sampled dozens of times and appeared in countless films and television shows. It remains one of the most commercially successful recordings in the history of popular music. And in a significant proportion of the context where it's played, it's functioning as the exact opposite of what Sting said he intended when he wrote it. Number 8, In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, 1981. The legend attached to this song is one of the most durable in rock history. You've probably heard it. Phil Collins once witnessed a man drown. A bystander, standing close enough to help, refused to intervene. Collins was watching from too far away to do anything. Years later, Collins tracked down the bystander, invited him to a concert, and sang "In the Air Tonight" directly to him from the stage, illuminating him with a spotlight as the lyrics landed. None of that is true. Collins has denied it repeatedly, including in interviews with Rolling Stone and the BBC, with a mixture of patience and exasperation. The urban legend grew large enough that Eminem referenced it in the song "Stan" in 2000, which gave it yet another generation of life. Collins told the BBC, "Nobody knows what the song is about, and I kinda like the mystery." But I can feel it coming in the air. What the song actually is a document of one of the most painful periods of Collins's life. His first wife, Andrea Bertarelli, left him in 1980 while he was on tour with Genesis. She had told him that if he went on the next tour, their marriage was over. He went on tour to Japan. When he came back, she said she was leaving and taking the children. Collins was so shattered by the separation that he temporarily left Genesis. He wrote the song during the recording sessions for his debut solo album Face Value, playing with a drum machine on his own and singing lyrics that came out spontaneously, which he wrote down afterward. The entire Face Value album was written in the shadow of that divorce. The ominous tone of "In the Air Tonight," the sense of something building and inevitable, was drawn directly from what Collins was living through. The gated reverb drum sound that explodes into the track more than 2 minutes in became one of the defining production sounds of the 1980s, an effect originally created in experimental sessions by Peter Gabriel and later refined by engineer Hugh Padgham. That drum sound is heard on records across the decade, and it started here in a song about a marriage ending. Number 7, Born in the U.S.A. by Bruce Springsteen, 1984. The misreading of this song is one of the great ongoing ironies of American popular culture. Born in the U.S.A. was used as campaign material. It was played at rallies. It was adopted as a patriotic anthem by people who heard the chorus and stopped listening. Ronald Reagan's campaign attempted to use it in 1984 without Springsteen's permission, prompting Springsteen to publicly rebuke the use. Despite his protest, the misreading has never fully gone away. The song was originally titled Vietnam, which should have made the intent clear from the start. Springsteen wrote it after spending time with Vietnam veterans, drawing on their accounts of coming home from the war to find their country had moved on, that the benefits and support they'd been promised were inadequate or non-existent, and that their sacrifice had been badly handled both during the conflict and after. He was also influenced by Ron Kovitz's memoir, Born on the 4th of July, which he read in the late 1970s. The central figure of the song is a man who served in Vietnam and returned to find that the life the country owed him was not available. The The roaring chorus was not designed as a celebration. It was designed as a cry of frustration, the sound of someone demanding to be heard by a country that wasn't particularly interested in listening. Springsteen included the song on his 1984 album, Born in the U.S.A., which became one of the best-selling albums in history. 7 of the album's 12 tracks were released as singles. The album's enormous commercial success almost certainly amplified the misreading, a record that Popular gets processed as something celebratory because that's the emotional register in which people receive massive hits. The people who heard it most carefully tended to understand it. The people who heard it most loudly did not. Number 6, Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler, 1983. This is one of the most dramatic power ballads of the 1980s, a song of enormous emotional scale and operatic structure that Bonnie Tyler performed with complete conviction. What most people don't know is that the song was written for an entirely different project and about something considerably more gothic than a tumultuous human relationship. Jim Steinman, the composer who wrote Total Eclipse of the Heart, originally composed the song for a planned Broadway musical adaptation of the 1922 silent film Nosferatu, the German expressionist vampire film directed by F.W. Murnau. The musical was to be called Nosferatu, a love story, and the song was titled Vampires in Love. Steinman confirmed this origin in an interview with Playbill in 2002, describing the lyrics as really like vampire lines, all about the darkness, the power of darkness, and love's place in dark. The song's structure, its building intensity, the sense of something vast and consuming approaching, was designed for a story about vampires and eternal night. When the Broadway production didn't materialize as planned, Steinman repurposed the material. Total Eclipse of the Heart was offered to Bonnie Tyler, who recorded it in 1982 for her album Faster Than the Speed of Night. It was released as a single in 1983 and reached number 1 in the UK, number 1 in the United States, and number 1 in multiple other countries. The music video, with its imagery of swirling wind, choir boys with glowing eyes, and Tyler wandering through gothic darkness, makes considerably more sense once you know the original context. It wasn't abstract artistic styling. It was leftover vampire imagery from a show that never got built.
Nothing I can say, a total eclipse of the heart.
Number 5, Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds.
I'll be alone, dancing, you know it.
1985. This is the song permanently associated with The Breakfast Club, the John Hughes film that became one of the defining cultural documents of the 1980s. The song was number 1 for 1 week on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 1985. It defined a generation's sense of adolescent longing and the fear of being forgotten. Simple Minds didn't want to record it. Jim Kerr and Charlie Burchill, the core of Simple Minds, have been candid in interviews about their initial resistance to the song.
Don't you forget about me.
They hadn't written it. It was brought to them specifically for the Breakfast Club soundtrack by producer Keith Forsey and songwriter Steve Schiff, and the band's instinct was to decline. They were a serious art rock band with a sophisticated sound and a particular identity. Recording a song written by someone else for a movie soundtrack felt off-brand. John Hughes and the producers pushed back, and Simple Minds eventually agreed to record it. The irony is that Don't You Forget About Me became by far their biggest commercial success, the song most people associate with the band. While the records they made entirely on their own terms, Records they considered artistically representative of who they were never reached that audience. The song they didn't want to record is the one they're remembered for. Keith Forsey has said in interviews that he offered the song to multiple artists before Simple Minds, though the list of who specifically was approached has varied in different tellings. What's consistent is that it was a song nobody initially wanted, that went on to become one of the most recognized recordings of the decade. The song's placement in the film sealed it. John Hughes used it over the closing credits of The Breakfast Club, which opened in February 1985 to enormous response from the teenage audience it was made for. The image of Judd Nelson raising his fist in the air, that final freeze frame, became inseparable from the sound of the song. Simple Minds had recorded something for a movie they weren't particularly invested in, and it had fused with one of the most emotionally resonant images of a generation's cinema. Jim Kerr has said in subsequent interviews that he came to genuinely love the song over time, and that the initial resistance now seems somewhat beside the point. What matters is what it became. What it became is permanent. Number 4, 99 Luftballons by Nena. What sounds like an irresistibly catchy 1980s pop song about balloons is in fact a song about nuclear war. Nena, the West German band, released 99 Luftballons in 1983 in Germany, and in 1984 re-recorded it in English as 99 Red Balloons. The German version charted internationally on the strength of its sound alone. Most listeners outside Germany had no idea what it was about. The English version made the content explicit for anyone paying attention, though the upbeat melody continued to work against comprehension. The song tells the story of 99 balloons floating into the sky near the Berlin Wall and being detected by military radar as a potential threat. In the escalating paranoia of Cold War air defense systems, the balloons trigger a military response, which triggers a counter-response, which spirals into full-scale war and the annihilation of an entire civilization. The last verse takes place in a world of ruins. The narrator picks up one of the remaining balloons and lets it go. Guitarist Carlo Cargus wrote the lyric after attending a Rolling Stones concert in West Berlin in 1982, watching balloons float into the sky near the wall and thinking about how easily military systems could misidentify innocent things as threats. He was not being abstract. The Cold War anxiety about accidental nuclear launch was very real in the early 1980s, and the technical possibility of a radar system triggering a weapons response based on a false positive was a documented concern. NATO and Warsaw Pact exercises had already produced genuine close calls. The song reached number 1 in the UK, then number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Most of the people dancing to it at clubs and parties in 1984 were dancing to a song about the end of the world. The version that broke through internationally, the German original, is the more potent of the two recordings. The English language 99 Red Balloons changed some of the imagery slightly and doesn't carry quite the same weight as Nena's vocal in the original. But both versions arrived at a moment when West Germany was living with the awareness that any potential conflict between NATO and the Warsaw Pact would very likely play out on German soil first. The political environment that produced the lyric was not abstract for the people who created it. It was the backdrop of daily life. The song has no happy ending. The narrator survives, walks through rubble, finds a balloon, and releases it, a gesture of mourning for everything that's been lost. That detail rarely comes up when the song gets played at 80s night.
99 Jahre Krieg ließen.
Number 3, Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division, 1980. Ian Curtis wrote and recorded Love Will Tear Us Apart while his marriage to Deborah Woodruff was collapsing. His newly diagnosed epilepsy was destabilizing his life, and the pressures of Joy Division's rising profile were becoming more than he could manage. The song was recorded in late 1979 and was to be released as a single in the spring of 1980. Curtis died by suicide on May 18, 1980, the night before Joy Division was scheduled to depart for their first American tour. He was 23 years old. The single was released a month later, in June 1980, and reached number 13 in the UK. It has since been re-released several times and now sits permanently in discussions of the most important recordings in post-punk history. The biographical context gives every line of the song a weight that it could not fully have had at the time of its recording. Curtis was not writing abstractly about relationship failure. He was writing about his actual marriage, his actual illness, his actual sense of deterioration. The song functions as a portrait of emotional exhaustion that the listener now knows was total. Joy Division continued after Curtis's death as New Order, and the remaining members have been thoughtful and measured about discussing the Joy Division period and what preceded Curtis's death. Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook, and Stephen Morris have all spoken about recognizing, in retrospect, that they missed signs of how serious Curtis's state of mind had become in the months before his death. The music Curtis left behind is substantial. Love Will Tear Us Apart is the piece of it that most people know first. And for most people, it remains the entry point into understanding what that band was actually doing. There is also a specific piece of context about the song's title that often goes unmentioned. Curtis was deliberately responding to the Captain and Tenele song, Love Will Keep Us Together, the #1 hit of 1975. Where that song offered optimism and togetherness as love's natural outcome, Curtis inverted the premise. Love, in his rendering, is the thing that destroys rather than sustains. For a man whose marriage was disintegrating under the weight of illness, fame, and personal unhappiness, the inversion was not a literary exercise. It was his honest assessment of what love had done to him. Number 2, Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, 1983. Billie Jean is one of the most technically accomplished and commercially successful recordings in the history of popular music. It was the second single from Thriller, released in January 1983. It reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 7 weeks. It was the song playing during Michael Jackson's first public performance of the Moonwalk on Motown 25. Yesterday, Today, and Forever in May 1983. The story behind the song is considerably darker than most casual listeners know. Jackson had been receiving letters from a woman who claimed he was the father of her child. The letters were frequent, escalating, and deeply disturbing. Jackson was not the father of the woman's child, but the letters continued. He began having nightmares about them. According to statements he made in subsequent years. Then, the correspondence crossed a line that went beyond harassment. Jackson received a package from the same woman that contained a letter, a photograph, and a gun. The letter stated that she wanted him to kill himself so that they could be together in the afterlife, and that she planned to kill herself and her child to join him. The package was turned over to law enforcement. Jackson began working through what he was experiencing by writing. The result was Billie Jean, a song from the perspective of a man confronted by a woman claiming he fathered her child, insisting on his own innocence, and trying to maintain his sanity in the face of an accusation he can't escape. The woman in the song is not named after any specific individual, and there was no actual child. But the emotional truth of the song, the paranoia, the dread, the insistence on innocence, was drawn directly from something real that Jackson was living through. The production of the song is another remarkable story. Jackson's longtime producer Quincy Jones initially didn't want to include Billie Jean on the Thriller album, reportedly finding the bass line too repetitive. Jackson insisted. The bass line has since been cited by countless musicians as one of the most effective in pop music history. Jones later acknowledged that his initial hesitation was wrong. Number 1, What's Love Got to Do With It by Tina Turner, 1984. The song itself, written by Terry Britten and Graham Lyle, not by Turner, is a philosophical argument about the difference between love and physical attraction, delivered with cool authority by a woman presenting emotional detachment as a kind of freedom. It went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in September 1984. It won the Grammy Award for Record of the Year, Best Pop Vocal Performance, and Song of the Year at the 1985 ceremony. It was the commercial foundation of one of the most dramatic career revivals in music history. What the song doesn't say, what Tina Turner herself has discussed at length in interviews and in her 1986 autobiography, I, Tina, is the context in which she recorded it. Turner had escaped an 18-year marriage to Ike Turner in 1978, walking out mid-tour with 36 cents and a mobile credit card after a violent altercation. The physical abuse within that marriage had been consistent and severe. She had attempted suicide in 1968, years before she found the strength to leave. After the separation, she spent years rebuilding, taking small club dates, performing in venues far beneath what she'd been accustomed to, maintaining her career through sheer will while Ike's professional life deteriorated rapidly. In the early 1980s, she was in a genuine professional crisis, unable to secure a major label deal in the United States. Roger Davies, her manager, helped her build momentum through Europe and Australia. A deal with Capitol Records eventually materialized, and Private Dancer, the 1984 album that included What's Love Got to Do With It, was the result. When Turner sang the song's lyric about emotional self-protection, about not letting something as dangerous as love overtake good sense, she was not performing an abstract philosophical position. She was speaking from the specific experience of a woman who had loved, who had stayed, and who had paid a severe cost for both. The detachment in the vocal is not coldness, it is survival. 10 songs, all of them from the 1980s, all of them sitting on your greatest hits playlist with stories underneath them that the radio never mentioned. That's one of the things about the songs you know best. You think you know them, and then you find out what was actually going on when they were written, and suddenly you're hearing something you didn't know you'd missed. If any of these change the way you'll hear a song you've known for 40 years, hit the like button and subscribe. There are a lot more of these stories where those came from. See you in the next one.